Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Dana again, and today you're at Research Road. This is a weekly series where we go through science and tech news with a bit of dry humor. Then we answer some questions from y'all. Today is the 12th of November, 2024, and on this date, way back in 1966, Buzz Aldrin of Apollo 11 fame achieved a different kind of first when he was in space with the Gemini 12 mission. He took the first selfie in space. As an additional fun fact, Gemini 12 was in space during a solar eclipse. So, starting off with tech news, a study of 2,000 Americans indicated that Gen Z spend about a quarter of their day consuming online content. Bitcoin broke $87,000. And now on to space. Skynet 1A, which is a military satellite launched by the UK in the late 1960s, moved from its orbit at some point. And, well, nobody knows who did it, when they did it, or why they did it. Researchers are trying to figure out why it's in orbit over the US instead of over Africa where it's supposed to be. Just to recap, a piece of military tech operated in a way that, so far, isn't explained by it being ordered to. And it's called Skynet. I'm sure when it comes to this story, I'll be back. In other military space news, the kind of sort of secretive U.S. space plane, the X-37B, reportedly executed a maneuver to alter its orbit. According to the information that is coming out, the maneuver will allow it to change orbit without consuming fuel and therefore give it more time in the sky. A fireball was observed in the sky over Texas, prompting some concern. It turns out it was just a Starlink satellite. Then on the east coast of the U.S., another object streaked across the sky. That was a meteor. The Japanese wooden satellite is in space. It made it to the International Space Station. It will be released into orbit from there. The idea is that wooden satellites will be more sustainable and create less pollution on re-entry. Now it's time to talk about the developing climate crisis. At COP29, a multi-billion-dollar carbon market was agreed to. The idea is that a carbon trade will help raise money to provide assistance for less wealthy countries to adapt for climate change. Trump is saying he will withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Agreement. Again, I'll put a link down below to a video breaking down what the Paris Agreement is and how it works. 2024 is set to be the warmest year on record. On the bright side, California, Colorado, Hawaii, and Washington saw wins for the climate during the election through ballot initiatives. A study suggests that climate change is the primary driver of the drought in the western U.S. In the world of animals, at time of production, there are still more than a dozen monkeys that have not been recaptured after they escaped a research facility in South Carolina. A dozen monkeys, an army of the 12 monkeys. What is it, 1995? It wasn't an outbreak reference, timely joke. Research is suggesting that LED lights on wetsuits and surfboards might discourage some shark attacks. We've talked a few times about the white beluga whale that many believed was linked to Russian intelligence. A new BBC documentary, Secrets of the Spy Whale, indicates that maybe it was just a guard trained to provide an alarm if it noticed underwater swimmers. That's not any less weird, is it? In health news, a person in British Columbia becomes Canada's first presumptive case of H5 avian flu from the most recent wave. A health official said, quote, "This is a rare event, and while it is the first detected case of H5 in a person in BC or in Canada, there have been a small number of human cases in the U.S. and elsewhere, which is why we are conducting a thorough investigation to fully understand the source of exposure here in BC." In the U.S., the CDC is calling for expanded testing after a study revealed avian flu is more widespread in agricultural workers than previously believed. Washington State is reporting a surge in whooping cough cases, especially in the area around Puget Sound. I am once again reminding everyone there's a vaccine for that. Now let's dig up the past a little. In Cornwall, England, a location known as King Arthur's Hall might be a bit older than thought. A new survey indicates it's 4,000 years older than previously believed and dates to the Neolithic period. DNA testing has indicated that many of the well-known stories about the people preserved from when Vesuvius erupted in AD 79 are, well, wrong. You know the famous sisters embracing in their final moments? Well, they're not sisters, and one of them is a man. On the banks of Germany's Rhine River, 15,800-year-old engravings shed light on Upper Paleolithic period fishing habits. It looks like they use nets. That doesn't really seem like a groundbreaking discovery, but it's still cool. And now on to oddities. Research indicates that married couples tend to share a vocabulary size. That's being taken to mean that selection might be tied to intelligence cues. That's just great. The eventual read on this will be that the movie Idiocracy isn't satire. Australia is going to try to grow something on the moon. The Australian lunar experiment promoting horticulture is set to begin in 2025 and will land a capsule on the moon with plants and seeds in it to find out more about what can grow there. Cool stuff. And now we're going to answer some of your questions. So the first item here isn't really a question, just a hello to those who are chilling out on beanbags and listening to this as part of Tech Tuesday. It made my day to find out I'm part of your week.
Since it's coming up in the news, what do you think of the coastline paradox? What's the solution to the problem?
This is a fun one. For those who haven't heard of this kind of obscure mathematical issue, the coastline paradox really deals with how coasts are measured. The famous example is that if you ask the Congressional Research Service, the coast of Alaska is a little more than 6,600 miles long. NOAA, on the other hand, says it's almost 34,000 miles long. What causes this giant difference? Mainly the accuracy of their measurement and what gets considered coastline. Picture a piece of Swiss cheese. If you're asked to determine how long the edge is and just go around the outside edge of the slice, you'll probably end up with a measurement of 12 to 14 inches. But if you count the edge of the holes, it'll be much more. That's what happens with the coastline. Some measurements don't count every little inlet and bay, so the measurement is smaller. What's the solution? The only real way to solve the issue is to come up with an internationally recognized standard for how to measure a coastline, and then everybody uses that. I am dying to know how this wound up in the news.
Dana gave a stat about a state's green energy production percentage. My wish is for a report on each state. On the other channel, perhaps. I live in a state that is afraid of aircraft vapor trails and have not been able to find good info on this. If not a video, then maybe a source? Thanks, and keep up the good work.
I'm trying to find a solid, more recent source on this. The best numbers I can find are 2 years old, and a lot has happened since then. When I get one, I'll put it out by state. That looks like all the questions for this week. This week's quote is attributed to Mark Twain. Keep away from people who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that, but the really great make you feel that you too can become great. So that's all the data we have to date. Hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you again soon.